Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Afterthoughts. Tonight, the 16th of February 2016, I have recorded a Mozart Sonata, this fifth one in G major. Kakkelverzeichnis 283. The fifth one also of the München sonatas, these six sonatas he wrote in München in 1775. And of the group of six, this fifth one is obviously the most famous one. In case you haven't heard the recording, you can find it just by clicking on the link in the description box over here in the upper right corner of the video by opening the card that is directing you to that video. So enough about administrative things, so to say. Let's jump into this Mozart sonata because there is a lot to be told about this sonata. In the first place, I'm sharing with you the questions I have. And as always, as a musician, you have to make decisions, and that's the interesting part of it. It is the difficult part as well if you operate, so to say, within this historical informed performance practice field. We today seem to have answers to everything, but I don't, and I think that we have still so many things to solve, so many things to rediscover, and to put things in new contexts. I'm really convinced that there is a lot that still can be, that still need research. And so what I share with you today is some answers, some interpretations, but a lot of questions as well. So, let's start. So my tempo choice, first of all, I don't know what is commonly used as a tempo. I can imagine that this piece is played often faster. But why do I choose this tempo? Because there are 8 notes in the beginning, the 16th note, use of 16th notes later on. So the 16th note they all have a structural fundamental use. There are no ornamentation. So that means that at the beginning, and actually Karl Emanuel Bach writes about that as well, that you should be careful when you play a piece à vue, so from paper, that you look inside or look a little bit further in the piece, that you might see some faster notes and that you implement them in the tempo of choice. But anyway, you can play this faster, but why I chose this tempo is because of this particularly place, and it's in the beginning. It's here. So the piece comes only after 4 bars to a rest, to an end point, but this G, in order to make sure that you make the bridge and give the listener enough space, enough time to jump to the new idea, and also in my head I need the time that I only can take if I choose a tempo that's not too fast, a little bit like the one I've chosen, of course. And I know when I was in piano class many years ago, in the previous century, that my teacher was always telling that if you had passages like this, you had to think over the bar, that always there was a kind of feeling going to the next bar. And I typically think that that's a kind of post-Wagnerian thinking. I mean, that's the idea of the long romantic sentences where you have where you have this breathing and this sentence go over several bars, and you have one tension bow that you have to follow, but it's very atypical 18th century as I feel it. So standing still, and certainly in the music of Mozart, he was really mastered that, continuing kind of perpetuum mobile, and then suddenly he takes a risk there, just implementing this break. But the metrical feeling, and we've talked about that in the past, several times. The metrical feeling for me means that in this 3/4 bar, that this tension is not over the bar, it's not over the bow, so to say. It's not late romantic, but it's 18th century Baroque style, meaning that the tension is within the beats. And if you just follow that path, then you come to a wonderful feeling of rest and peace and calm. Also here. And the 16th notes, they feel as a kind of liberation. It's not easy though, because you have to follow the tempo, so the beat, so the metrum, so to say. Not speeding up here and again. So this beginning of the piece is really difficult. You have this 8-note structure that you choose from the beginning with in your back of your head the 16 notes that follow. But the tempo should be very straightforward, because if you don't feel it, you cannot play 3 different elements in the same metrum. The beginning 8 notes, then the standing still passage, and then the quarter notes, which are difficult to keep exactly in tempo. And then, then the 16th note. Why is it so important to have also these quarter notes in the same tempo? Because when you keep the tempo, when you keep the metrum very strict, then at the end, only then, to my feeling, you feel really the whole sentence as a whole. Not by pushing it like as a kind of tension, rubato-like feel, but just as a metrical feeling. And then he continues in the same sense. Sorry. Same thing. And then just ending, bridge, beautiful. And then suddenly there is much movement in the music. And you might notice at my right hand, so essentially this is a unisono passage. Mozart just makes an ornament, and I add in the reprise and in the reprise of the exposition another one, just by sliding, by connecting this third. But that's not important. It's just giving motion to the music here. And also there, and it's wonderful on the clavichord. On the pianoforte, obviously, you can do it as well, but you miss there a little bit the punch of this Nachdruck, like Emmanuel Bach explains. But anyway, there is a kind of figure which the clearly indicates. But in this long passage, you should try to keep this figure separated, but within the movement. And then you have this beautiful syncope. They all get a slight accent. If you don't do it, it sounds very flat. And then here, there's a written out short for short appoggiatura. It's very important here, because you seldomly see this figure, so 16th with 8 note, dotted 8 note. And so that, in my opinion, can only mean the short voorslag. In contrast to the long appoggiatura, and we talk about that in a minute, because you might have noticed that I play all written out appoggiaturas long, and I will tell you why. So this is a kind of indication that he wants a short Vorschlag. And with a lot of variation. Here. Very orchestral-like. So, big contrast. It's not easy though, because you tend to do this, I mean... But the effect is bigger when you do exactly what you write. And here, don't forget the left hand. Beautiful. And the left hand here really adds a kind of pulse. I don't make the trill too complicated, because you have on the left hand this kind of polyphony. And it just struggles with it when you make the trill too complicated. Again here the syncopas in the left and the right hand. Oh yeah, with the shift of rhythm, with the shift of bar structure. And that we haven't talked about that, but that's really important. He does that from the beginning on. If you have this capacity, you have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then he shifts again, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So he goes from 3 bar structure to 2 bar structure, and he does it the same here. It's not indicated. But if you just play it in a 3 bar structure, it's kind of boring. It's not boring, but I mean it makes more sense to my feeling if you play it just in 2/4. Okay, and then the middle section. There you have all these ornaments, these short Vorschlag, these short appoggiatura, so to say. And I play them long, exactly actually as Leopold Mozart writes them, or write about them in his Violinschule. Immanuel C.P. Bach writes about them in the same sense, and Gottlob Turk, 1789, much later. Actually, not too much later, it's 14 years later than this sonata has been composed. He writes again the same way, which means that if you have a short appoggiatura, like the first one, that's played short, that's played long. I mean a long appoggiatura, of course, sorry. That you give the appoggiatura, the Vorschlag, the full quarter length, and that you play the main note as a kind of release, and then it's written like this. But I play it as a long, and then the left hand has cha-ram. There is no slur, but I play as if there is a slur. Imagine that there is just a string orchestra of a quartet. So it's extremely difficult, because you have to release this A, and at the same time you have to give the pulse to the left hand. And then here he writes the Vorschlag, the ornament out in quarter note length. So. And then, after having these passages, it feels like a kind of liberation here. Make the contrast as big as you can. And of course, on an historical keyboard, you shouldn't try to translate that, what you have to do on a Steinway grand piano, obviously. You cannot give all the power that has that instrument, because then the contrast would be way too big, but here on the clavichord you can give it all. So these ornaments, these Vorschläge, these apogiaturas, they are something that is really hard to decide on. We've talked about it. And it's not simple. If you follow the book, C.P.E. Bach till Gottlob Turk, it is no doubt all the 19th century editions, early 19th century editions, they all interpret them as long. And yet we play it doesn't make sense to my feeling there. So that is something that I really am not quite sure about. I cannot tell you how it was, how it should be, and what you should do. But it makes a huge impact, playing the apogiatura short or long, obviously. Okay, wonderful piece. Then the Andante, I take a quite good tempo. I mean, good in the sense of not too slow. Hier is decrescendo. Also here. You have to release the right hand, but giving us the accent in the left, which is extremely difficult. Here it is extremely difficult because it is so high in this instrument. It would be the same at the pianoforte. You don't have too much sound here, and still there has to be a kind of feel of release. I like this tempo with it gives a kind of freedom, so to say. Okay, also here I play all the apogiaturas long. Okay, we'll do some project on that. I am working on some interesting things, I think, but I'll share it later with you. Okay, then we have the third part, which is a beautiful presto, and I have chosen a tempo that's maybe a little bit faster than I normally tend to do, but I think it makes sense. Also here, I make it long. The other way would be it's possible. Don't forget the pills in the left hand. And do it on every bar, because if you don't do it on every bar, you play in the kind of 6/8 bar structure, and it's explicitly 3/8. prevents you from choosing a tempo that is way faster, because then you would come in the 6/8 bar structure or even in the 12/8, and that's something very different from 3/8. 3/8 has much more accentuation, it's not too fast. So every time he writes a slur over the beat, over the bar structure, excuse me, give it an accent, it's a counter accent, it's just beautiful. Also here I tend to keep the first note just to make a counter melody. Da da pa 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 pam da ya pa pam. So you have two accents. And then the syncopas, I play them as if I play them too soon. I don't think they come too soon, but maybe slight 1/1000th of a second, and I give them a slight accent within the piano field, and that makes it, for me, it's so joyful to do. It's kind of dialogue. If you don't do it, it's boring. It's beautiful music anyway. Play what there is, but add something more. Heavy accent. Crescendo. And here you can add a little bit of the tension towards the last chords, I think. Also here, long appoggiaturas, played otherwise it would sound like this. Strange situation, because you have in the third bar, here they're written out. Okay, and then it's inevitable that the deepest A has a kind of accent, which is beautiful. Again. Take just a little time for that, because it's difficult, but it needs a little time. And then, that is very strange. I mean, beautiful, but unseen, I think, in that kind of music. That you have on the highest note, it's piano, and then it's forte on the chords. If you see it as an accent, as a counter accent, it's very nice. And try to how would I say, if you have this, it should be very strict, because you have had all kinds of jumps and all kinds of counter accents. This, you only have 2 bars to settle that again, to come back to the normal 3/8 bars. You come. Difficult. And a kind of recitativo, I take my time a little bit. I slow down maybe a little bit, but I keep up with the tempo. I catch up the tempo later. It's a bit like asking a question. Left hand to F sharp major. Standing still a little bit, and then to the left hand. And give it all on the instrument. I mean, it's really powerful. And then different fingerings here in the course of... I'm playing this piece for several years now, but I chose last time to just do everything with 2/4. It gives nice, you just have a kind of a beginning, don't go too fast in the beginning. Heavy accent, division of your arm weight on the first and go down. Straight. So I take a little bit time, and maybe on the recording I should have done it a little bit more, but and then in tempo, counter accent. Again, pam 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 pam. Contrast. And then yum pam ram pam. Oh, that's one bar too far. But it's constantly a kind of giving accents on the right, on the first beat, then on the third beat, and that playing is really wonderful. I mean, that is so nice music. Okay, and then it continues in the same way. So again, okay, thank you for watching, and see you next time again.